A 51-year-old man has just been given an immediate 8-week prison sentence just for sharing 3 Facebook posts, which shows just how seriously the courts are taking any alleged offences to do with these riots. So if you'd like a refreshing change and alternative from the mainstream media, please do hit subscribe on my channel here, because about 70% don't do that when you watch my channel regularly. I'd be really grateful if you did that. I'm on a mission to 1 million subscribers to help share the truth, the raw truth, and nothing but the truth with you on this channel to do with law. So let's get into this, and what is this all about? Well, the offence underpinning this, I believe, is an offence under the Communications Act, which is under Section 127, which would be the improper use of public electronic communications network, which basically means anything you use online, any online platform, such as Facebook, X, or wherever. And a person is guilty of an offence if he sends by means of public electronic network a message or other matter that is grossly offensive or of an indecent, obscene, or menacing character, or causes any such message or matter to be sent. And so that could mean sharing it and so on. And it goes on, a person is guilty of an offence if, for the purposes of causing annoyance, inconvenience, needless anxiety to another, etc. And so one question that a lot of people asked is, why are so many of these being sentenced so quickly? And secondly, why are people being sentenced so severely? And I will attempt to give you some explanation to both of those. Now, the first, why are they being sentenced so quickly? Well, the most obvious answer to that is they are undoubtedly pleading guilty to this offence. There's a spin-off question then as to why are they pleading guilty? So let's get into this in some detail. So first of all, they can be sentenced relatively quickly if they've pleaded guilty, because then obviously the court can deal with them there and then. There is an incentive. And whilst I will be careful to say that the court and the judiciary act independently, there is pressure from government to deal with these quickly. But independently, and for reasons that I'll come to in a moment, the courts have indicated, judges have indicated, that they are dealing with these things with a zero-tolerance approach, and they are dealing with them quickly. But as I said, if someone has pleaded guilty, they can be dealt with very quickly, and therefore they can be handed down an immediate custodial term, which will be commenced immediately. Now, this sentence, I understand, was discounted for several reasons, one of which was because he had deleted the posts and said that he was sorry for sending them and causing any offence, and also that he pleaded guilty early, and so this was reduced by roughly a third. And so his original sentence would have been 12 weeks, but in view of his guilty plea and in his apology for sharing the posts and removing those posts, he's been given credit by the judge in this case. But then there's the extended question as to why they are pleading guilty, and so early pleading guilty to these offences. Now, there's 2 possible explanations to this, one of which is they genuinely have been advised and they believe that they are guilty of the offence, because if they did send such a message or share such a post with the intent of causing needless anxiety, or that they intended it to be grossly offensive, or that it was an indecent or obscene or a menacing character post or message, then if they've been so advised that that indeed was the case, then they might well choose to plead guilty. But there is also another somewhat more cynical possibility going on here, and that is very well explained in the book by The Secret Barrister, which I'll link in the description below. Go and buy it and read it. It is an affiliate link, but it is a fantastic insight into the criminal justice system. Now, one of the reasons that is possible that some of these are pleading guilty early is that judges have already indicated in comments on previous cases that they might well be remanded into custody, meaning if they plead not guilty, they might be held in custody until trial, which in some cases might be longer spent in custody than their prison sentence might have been. So using this case as an example, if they were advised that they might get, 6 to 8 weeks in prison, but it might be longer than that waiting for trial, then obviously the incentive there is to plead guilty, because they will get an immediate sentence. They'll be out of prison before they might be out of custody, if they plead guilty. Now, this is, of course, not the same as being sent to prison without a trial, as some have noted online. It is being remanded into custody for good reasons. If we think of the Just Stop Oil example where they were remanded into custody, that was because there was a high likelihood of further offences, which is one of the big objections to bail. And so they were remanded into custody and pending trial. And so for more on how that works, because that is a very broad and generic overview, again, check out the Secret Barrister book linked in the description below, and you'll find that a fascinating read. And so now on to the second question. Lots of people have asked why it is that some of these sentences seem so severe. Now, something of an explanation I can give you here is that in a similar case to this one, the judge was noted to say that the courts are taking a zero-tolerance approach to cases like this. The judge said as follows: "This offence, I'm afraid, has to be viewed in the context of the current civil unrest up and down the country. And I've no doubt at all that your post is connected to the wider picture." Now, these posts in this other case, they said that the person accused said that the messages were directed at the police. The judge said in response, "I don't accept that your comments and the emojis you posted were directed at the police. I've read the case summary of the comments you made on arrest, which clearly demonstrate to me that there's a racial element to the messaging and the posting of these emojis. That has to be reflected in the sentence, as does there need to be a deterrent element in the sentence that I impose, because this sort of behaviour has to stop." The judge goes on and encourages others to behave in a similar way, and ultimately it leads to the sorts of problems on the streets that we've been seeing in so many places up and down this country. This offence is serious enough for custody. So that just shows the seriousness with which the courts are taking cases like this, as indeed the government, although I do stress that they are separate. There is obviously political pressure to prosecute these cases, and there is separate pressure for the judges to deal with them severely. Now, of course, judges are going to take all of the circumstances into account when passing sentence for any offence, and so in offences such as these, which judges have seen to be linked to the civil unrest and violent disorder up and down the country, the judges are of course taking that into account and wanting to stamp that out. And so by passing an immediate sentence, the judges are sending the message out that if you are committing these sort of offences, i.e. sharing posts like this which are found to be offensive, menacing, etc., then they are going to hand sentences like this down so that it deters other people from committing those offences. Now, this then gives rise to the question of freedom of speech, and is this an erosion of freedom of speech? And so this now is very much a balancing act between the freedom of expression and what we should accept in a civil society. Now, I'm not casting opinions on here. Like I said, I'm just giving you the raw truth on this channel as it is. This is the balancing act that the courts and the judges here are having to do. And indeed, to an extent, the government, because whilst the government's primary objective, I would certainly hope, is to keep civil order throughout the country, I would also hope that they do aim to balance that with the freedom of expression. And should we be free to express something that then leads to civil unrest and violent disorder? Now, phrased like that, you'll probably agree that you shouldn't have the freedom to give rise to violent disorder and so on. However, there is a very valid question as to what you should be allowed to post and what should be permitted before they can become criminal. So for something of my opinions on that, again, please do check out my other channel, Black Belt Secrets, link below. You'll find some of my opinions on there. I'm obviously not crossing into any incitement territory over there, just giving you my opinions on what I think of some of the sentences and what's going on. But this is the balancing act that the courts are doing here. The judges are quite clearly trying to stamp out this kind of behaviour, which is giving rise to civil unrest and violent disorder around the country, by handing out these sentences. And so while some of you might find some of these sentences hard to believe, and you might still be tempted to post things online like this, I would very seriously urge you, as the government recently said, think before you post. It sounds quite a ridiculous thing for the government to be saying, think before you post on social media. But if you think of it in the round as the courts seeing these posts and messages as encouragement and incitement to what's been going on around the country, then although you might not agree with it, perhaps you can understand it. Now, again, I stress, I'm not telling you that this is absolutely what I think. I'm neither for nor against in this video. I'm telling you that's the balancing act that's going on. That is what the courts are wrangling with. That is what the government is wrangling with. because ultimately no one wants civil unrest. I would like to think that the vast majority of the country do not want violent disorder. The vast majority of the country do not want shops being smashed in and things stolen and vehicles being set on fire and burnt down, etc. I'm sure that the vast majority of people around do not want those things. And so if these messages are seen by the authorities, by the judiciary to encourage that sort of activity, that is why they are treating them so severely. And that is the balancing act that we have. So in isolation, in a period of perfect civil normality, with no civil unrest around the country or whatever, then one message or one shared message or whatever taken in isolation like that would probably not result in a custodial sentence. It would probably, if prosecuted at all, would result in either a fine or a community order rather than a custodial sentence. But in the context of what's happened, that is clearly what the judges are saying is going on here. The judges are saying that it has to be taken in the context of everything else that's going on, the wider picture, the civil unrest around the country, and that behavior needs to stop. That is what the judges are saying. That is the raw truth. So regardless of what you see in headlines and where you read it, and so doubtless you will have seen articles and headlines that try to sway you one way or another. Hopefully you'll see my video here as a completely neutral, balanced, objective assessment of what's really going on. That is what's going on. That is why it's being taken seriously. There's a cynical element to it, perhaps, as well, where people might be pleading guilty, potentially because they are at risk of being remanded into custody, because that is not an absolute given. Just to be clear, the starting point is that there is a right to bail unless there's a valid objection, and one of the valid objections might be that there might be further offences and etc. So judges have indicated that people might be remanded into custody, and so that is a very real risk that some people may not want to take. But as I say, for more on that, it's a fascinating read and an insight into the criminal justice system in The Secret Barrister's series of books, which I'll link in the description below. Go check them out. It's a fantastic read. And particularly if you're thinking of a career in law, you might want to read that first. And so genuine shout out there, big fan of the work. Check it out and you'll enjoy the read. So I hope that's been somewhat enlightening. Again, if you want my opinions, check out Black Belt Secrets in the description below. If you want to have some tips on making money and running businesses, you can check out my money channel, as I call it, Daniel Shensmith, link below. I'm really grateful to all of you subscribing just recently because I very much enjoy sharing this insight, this raw truth of how I see things on here. Hopefully you find it as a refreshing, neutral, unbiased, no rubbish, no nonsense approach to what's going on and indeed on Secrets, what I think. So thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.